Consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages into the universe between your ears. Our mission, to explore collective wisdom, seek out amazing secrets, and spread the message of personal potential.
It goes back to the video you brought up, right? Which is like, that advice, that piece of advice, right? I always think like, you have no idea who's listening. Yep. You have no idea who's watching and listening. You have no idea who this might make a difference for. You know, we all might have an idea or a guess at who it might be, but you never know. You never ever know. And I've just always been blown away and humbled when I get a chance to meet people that have either taken our course. I've never met them, right? And I'll meet them at like an event. New Media Summit was similar. I met a couple of my students and I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like you guys are real, you know? And they're like, oh, you're real. Like you're exactly, like this guy on Instagram or whoever, or like wherever they follow me. Yeah. And it's always humbling to meet these people, but you never know which piece of, you know what I mean? Like which piece of content resonates.
We've had a few people who I've reached out to and asked to be on the show who have said no. We've had a couple who just don't respond, For some reason, it's always women. Ladies.
What's
that about?
Ladies.
And that's okay, But it surprises me when the first thing they ask is, what are your numbers? How many people, how big is your audience? Because it's for exactly what you just said. And our audience today might be 4 people, but 6 months from now might be 4 million. You have no way of knowing what it's going to be. And that episode that you record today is going to be alive when we hit 4 million. But if you don't record it, it's not. Right? It's not a radio show, which is the thing that I love about this. It's not, you get it out there and you hope that person is listening. Yeah. Because once it's done, it's done. Yeah. The podcast is always there, and it just doesn't make sense to not, as long as the show is a fit. Yeah. Man, you ought to do it. What do you got to lose? You burn a half an hour or an hour of your time and you don't get anything out of it. Well, you've made worse decisions.
Do you find children watching or taking courses, like, I don't know, teenagers too? Or can you even have an idea like what kind of age? How young?
Demographics?
Yeah, like how young?
For podcasting or like
for your courses?
I don't think
a high schooler like take your course and take value.
Well, of course. Well, okay. So if it's a conversation of value, right, then I think anybody could find. I think you could go to a meetup that's free, right, or for $5, and I think it's up to you to be able to create that value, right? Like, could you meet one person? Could you get one idea? For me, I always ask people: is it a matter of price or is it a matter of value, right? Because value we know. Right? Value is up to the person to be able to create. I don't know if teenagers could make the investment. A lot of them, right? I know when I was in high school, I definitely could not. You know what I mean? I could barely, I was just creating, I had like a job that paid like $8 an hour and like, I hated it. And like, I remember I got paid like, I think my bi-weekly paycheck when I was like 15 years old was like $135 and some change. And like, that was enough to like buy lunch and like, and I didn't want to like rely on my parents and all the time. But I think young people, and if you've worked with, like I've gotten an opportunity to like, there are some really great young people that are not just hyper smart, but great practitioners of social media, of podcasting, of, now, I don't know if you guys know this. I mean, I didn't know this, but there's an entire industry around online video games. And we're talking like multi-million, if not billions of dollars flooding into social media called Twitch and really EA Sports. But like all these teams, like they have a very unique advantage being in this day and time, right? I think young people are amazingly, like, they're more powerful than ever because they're the only ones that could possibly even keep up with the amount of changes and the amount of, updates and new things that a business owner could consider,
That's
but yeah, I mean, I think it's two things, right? Value, it's really up to you to be able to justify value. I've had people they could attend the same event and someone could say, there's no value. I want my refund of $5. We used to do events in Toronto. This would happen occasionally. And I would be so baffled, so confused, right?
Yeah.
I'm like,
wow, like
you couldn't find any value. Like you couldn't find it, right? And I was like, wow. And then there's people that invested the same amount and was able to find a co-founder, was able to take their marketing or find someone on their team, right? Or got that one idea from the talk that, shifted things a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think it's who is looking for that value. But I think price for young people, I don't know a lot of people that can invest maybe just a couple $1,000s into learning a skill. I know people do it all the time in university and college. That's a different debate. But, I think it's just a matter of, if their parents or any guardians are helping them out with any investments with themselves.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to back up again and go to what I talked about really early on. And that was the podcast that you did. It was just you talking about this piece of advice that somebody gave you. And because I thought, man, that's something that I have learned really pretty recently over the last year or so.
Yeah.
And I wish to God I had learned it when I was 40 years younger, You want me to set it up, or do you want to just jump in and talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, why don't I go? Why don't I? Because so what Tim is referring to is a specific episode that I just felt compelled to share. I also think podcasting is one of these amazing outlets whenever you get those insights, like whenever you're like stuck in line anywhere, or you just wake up, or maybe you're going for a walk and you're like, boom, like you just get this like huge epiphany, or you maybe just get a reminder of something. And I tell the story, and Tim, make sure I'm on the right track here. But I tell the story of, I had quit my job. I spent about 14 months vagabonding in China at that time. And I came back, I moved back in with my parents, and I met up one of my old coworkers for drinks. Right. And he was like, hey, come to this old, come to where we used to meet up and come grab a drink with us. And I said, sure, why not? Right. I got nothing to do. So I'm learning like 10 million things. I'm getting nowhere. Great. I could probably use an alcoholic beverage. So I get there and I see some of my old coworkers. They happen to be getting drinks at the same time. And so, we started, they're like, hugging. There's like, oh my God, how was Shanghai? Right. All those, the conversation goes exactly how you think it would go. And then they asked the one question that I dread that anyone would ask me that at that time, which is, what are you doing now? What are you going to do now? Right? What are you doing now? And one of them was joking. They were like, oh, are you going to come back to, you're going to come back to our company and do the same thing? Right. And I was like, I don't know, right? Because like I went through all this I like sold furniture and like moved out of downtown and like quit this job that I really liked, but I just knew that there wasn't that future there for me, or at least to what I wanted. And I started sharing with them what I wanted to do. And I said, hey, I wrote all these things down, back in the day. I wrote that one day I want to go and speak on stages with these people. I want to go and have a message to inspire millions, and I want to go change the world ultimately, but I want to do it on my own accord. I want to have a message that I can get behind. I want to one day write books and maybe have a TV show and be able to have the freedom that I want, right? And be able to, retire my parents so that, all their sacrifices meant something. You know what I mean? And I went deep. I like just shared and like just kind of vomited my dreams to them, right? And I said, this is roughly what I'm trying to do, and I'm here now, and I know it doesn't seem much, but I wrote 2 blog posts this week, and I'm doing a video, and so I was like just like sharing, right? And it was kind of quiet. It was a table of like 5 people. Bar was loud, but they were kind of quiet. And they kind of let me finish, and I was nervously drinking. I was like, when you just need a break, and you're like, I'm just gonna keep drinking until someone else breaks the silence. And one of the ladies was like, oh, Jay, that's great, that's good for you, right? And the other was like, yeah, you know what, good job, right? Yeah. And they would kind of go off into their own conversation because it was probably just awkward for everybody. And someone sitting really close to me, she kind of took her time, and she said, Jay, I was listening to your whole little rant there just now, and I think you definitely have some potential to do whatever it is that you want to do, but I have one little suggestion for you. And I was like, sure, I'm open to it, whatever. Like, I'm open to anything right now, And they're like, can you just, next time you do that, can you just actually own what you say more? Because I don't believe you, I don't think you own it enough. And I was silent, and at first, my first thought was, who's this person telling me how to live my life? You know what I mean? Yeah. What do they know about some of my dreams, right? And then the second, I kind of sat with it for a few seconds, and I thought, maybe they're right? Maybe, like, why would they say that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe there's some truth to it, And then, am I owning who I am? Am I owning my gifts, my dreams of where I want to be? And I reflected on that for a while, and I thought, we kind of, I don't know if I've ever, said thanks or ever went back to her, but I always thought, that's such great advice to all creators, to all entrepreneurs, because if only we were able to accept our gifts, if we were able to accept ourselves, right? If we were able to own who we truly are, because so much of this process, whether it's about creating a podcast or creating a YouTube show or creating a business or creating whatever it is, the life that you want, so much of this is about figuring out your voice. It's about figuring out who you are. It's about figuring out, what do you want in your life? You know what I mean? It's not about taking my answers, right? Because chances are Tim's answers are going to be a little different than Gabi's answers. Gabi's answer is a little different than your answer. Your answer is different than mine, right? But at each of those are the truest answers to ourselves. It's about having the courage to say it and own it.
Which has to come from having the courage to actually ask yourself the question and actually think about it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're in positions where the stuff that we want to do, that we would really, it really calls us, we're not in a position to do due to job responsibilities or relationship issues or whatever. And sometimes to do what we really feel called to do means some things have to go, and that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. Maybe all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think at all times, for sure. I honestly, there's a story about me kind of, quote unquote, discovering and stumbling into my own gift. We can go into that if you want, but I mean, long story short, I knew I was the valedictorian graduation speaker for my high school. Not because I was such a academically gifted individual. I had won a contest and I pretty much bypassed all these academically gifted individuals that wanted to do it, right? Because they wanted it for their college or university resume. I just wanted to do it because I thought it would be kind of cool. And anyways, they had this competition. I ended up winning the spot, and I knew. I'm not joking. At 17 years old, I knew. I deep down, I knew I wanted to pursue speaking or something to do with the way I communicate, to be able to present ideas to people, to be able to maybe move people, maybe to inspire them to do something different, right? I knew at 17, and a lot of times I think about it and I go, well, if I knew the truth, right? If I knew back then, why did I feel the need to go, spend 4 years in business school, right? Or go and get a job and work a couple years and then go and do a detoxification? Why did I feel the need to go through those motions, right? And it goes back to, I didn't, at 17, I couldn't even understand, like, I just didn't understand the world. I couldn't understand going off and doing that and pursuing that, what that would look like. I didn't have anybody in my life, or YouTube wasn't around, and social media was very different even when I was back in high school. And this was like 10 years ago, right? Like 10, 11 years ago. It's not that far, but it's far enough where I was scared. I didn't have that courage. I didn't have the commitment to my gift that I have now. And
it's what's, it's so hard at that age.
Yeah, like, and it's like,
I look at those people that do, and I'm like, who the hell are you? What planet are you from? How do you know this? You just got done sucking your thumb.
Yeah.
You've already got a plan for changing the world.
Right.
It's crazy.
And so I don't hold it against myself. But when I started, I already waited. Someone asked me, kind of in a condescending way at the time. They were like, "Who are you to have a podcast?" Right? And I think a lot of content creators they ask themselves that question. Who am I to do what I'm trying to do? Right? Who am I to have this YouTube show? Who am I to put out these Insta stories or put out this type of content? And when they asked me, I shared with them the story, and I said, to be honest with you, I've been waiting 9 years to even summon the courage to do this. You know what I mean? So you got to give me a break here, and don't try to project your fear, right, onto what I'm doing, because I'm dealing with my own stuff here, right? Like, the hardest part of the whole journey is that inner demon. Sure. It's that inner voice that when I'm sleeping on the couch in my parents' living room and thinking, what am I doing? Like, who's going to listen to this? Are you crazy? Right? Like, and you're thinking all those ideas, and it's not someone else telling you that. It's you.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the basics of all basics, right? Of like, if you can't believe in yourself, how could you sell anything if there's no conviction, if there's no commitment to what you're trying to create? But it's really hard in the beginning because you don't know what it is that you're trying to create. Mm-hmm. You just have an inkling that you should be there. And then you show up and you're like, I hope, you know what I mean? Like, I hope it was a little more, and you just present it in the best possible way. But, a lot of times it's messy. It's really messy. Yeah. It's chaotic. It makes you want to go home and cry. I didn't even have a room to do that in. And I was trying to prove everyone around me wrong. So I think everyone goes on their own journey. I don't hold that time against me. I was really grateful for the 9 years that I had built up, and built up more of a confidence, built up more of my skills, right? So that I can do this today.
Well, there's, the idea of the journey is the stuff where we grow, right? But if you don't have the biggest thing that I wish that I had been able to do throughout my life is to have that clarity you were talking about earlier, right? And know, this is what I want. I'm going after it. And because in trying to get from here to there, that's where you learn all this stuff. Right? And the journey is the important part. But so even if you don't get there, then you can look back and go, well, it was worth it anyway because I grew from all these things.
Yeah.
Right. But it's hard while you're walking the path. Right. In some cases, it's impossible, I think, because you're in the middle of you can't see the forest for all these trees. The trees are in the way. But when you're in the middle of stuff, it's hard to be outside of it at the same time.
Yeah.
And I forget what the hell that was about, but
it's so great to hear you, Tim, when you go into this, because I'm looking at you and you're still searching, right? You still. God, yeah. And I'm thinking, what? I kind of go, is that really about just searching all the time? What is it that you want? Or maybe there's another take, maybe another way of looking at your life that, you don't go after things all the time, or goals, like you were saying in one of your videos, right? Don't set goals, right? You were saying. For a while now, the idea of just kind of waking up and just doing whatever the hell you feel like. I was like my mantra. I said, you know what do I feel like doing right now? And you know what helps is to get to it, right? If there are no obstacles. Okay, so you're saying you were like working from your parents' house, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine you got, I don't know, $5 million in your bank account, right? Would you be still pursuing podcasting and creating this content or whatever? Just for real, like really, like go down to it's like I got 5 and 6 zeros right now, and I could take it anywhere I want, right? Do I want to do this podcasting? Who the hell cares? What do I got to say? I got better things to do. I just don't want to do blah, blah, blah. I'm tired of it. What can I do? Interesting, And that could get you like really focused. Am I doing actually what I want, or am I doing this because there's a need? Because I want to make it, because I wanted to create sustenance, because I want to get, ahead, or maybe to prove to somebody that I'm something and my voice is heard, for all these wrong reasons, right? I'm doing this, right? So when you were talking about, do you own it? That's a profound question. What does that mean that you own it? Does it mean like that your message has this clarity and you truly are doing what you want, what your passion is, and you go through life? What does that mean to own to own it for you guys?
I think it's about, for anybody to be successful at almost anything, they have to step into it. I think it's an identity shift. This is something we try to do in our accelerator program. When people work with us to try to launch their podcast, for example, like in the first video, I say you have to look at this as in you are a podcaster. You're not building to be a podcaster. You're not one day going to be a podcaster. No. We're going to start from ground zero. You are a podcaster. So do what a podcaster would do, right? Like you kind of step into that identity. I think owning it goes into the same idea of owning who you are, what your message is, what you stand for, your belief, your values, right? And having some level of conviction and clarity on those things so that sales are not sales. It's you just sharing what you believe in, And when you're talking to believers, it's a lot easier. When you have to convince someone, it almost never works, right? Because they're not vibing, they're not in the same alignment with you. So that's how I personally look at owning it. I know what I would do with the 5 million, by the way.
Yeah. It's interesting to contemplate that, right? A little bit.
No. Like someone asked me this one question. So I was at this dinner. Back of that phase. You guys are making really going, like, I'm like going back and digging these stories.
This is therapy, Jay. You didn't know what you were coming for.
I know.
It's like an intervention. Get you in the room and we're not going to let you go until you answer these questions.
It's getting hot in here. Like, man. So I was at this dinner and I always share the story, but I have no idea how I got invited to this dinner. I think someone dropped out, to be honest. And like, I was like a last minute fill in. It was one of these like entrepreneur mastermind dinners. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know anybody at the table. None of the people really knew who was coming. Everybody had their own successful kind of business or track record. And I don't know if it was true, but probably I felt like I was the dumbest person at the table. I probably had the least net worth at the table. I had no idea what half the table was even talking about. Like they were sharing all these like, oh, you should do this. This is like a merger over here. Oh, have you ever thought about like, I was like, how are these? I can't keep up. Like, I don't even know. I'm just eating. I'm just being very quiet. And so one of the icebreaker questions was, what would you do if you all of a sudden got $10 million? Like, what would you do? Right. And I was so lost at that time that I didn't really know. It kind of caught me off guard. It's kind of like, okay, introduce yourself. And I was like, oh, I'm Jay. I'm going to try to do this and the host of the party was like, okay, this is getting like, this guy doesn't really know, what the normal, I'm like, well, when I was like in high school and, like this happened, and he was like, okay, stop. What would you do with 10 million? So it was like, it was kind of like that. Right. And it caught me so off guard. I didn't have an answer prepared. I was like, I don't know. And I thought about it for, 5 seconds. And like at that time, I felt so indebted to my parents. I just felt so bad and guilty on so many different levels. I said, honestly, I just give it all to them so that they could stop like operating in their little scarcity zone. And even though it's out of love, but and I imagine this is not just specific to Asian culture, but I think a lot of times when immigrants immigrate to a country,
I'll tell you, I'm from Russian heritage. I would have the same answer if you would take me like back 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I felt so, I guess, thankful for the parents to first of all bring us here to the U.S. and take this responsibility for us, right? I would totally identify with your answer here. Yeah. And so what did you come up with? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, I wanted to give it to them so that they could, there's all these like good reasons, right? Of like, they would stop operating in scarcity. They'd finally feel secure. It would, they wouldn't look at me as like such a waste of whatever skill, talent, or I just wouldn't get those looks anymore, right? Like they'd come home and like, can you just imagine? I'm like trying to like whiteboard. I didn't have anything to hang it on, so like I'd like put it on the side, and occasionally it would like tip over. I had all these like papers everywhere. Like I don't know why I'm building an online company and I'm printing out all these things, right? So like it was just a mess. And I wanted to give it to them because I knew, even though at that time I didn't create anything yet, this was before the podcast, I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be okay. Like I'm going to be okay, right? But like they're worried because they think I'm not going to be okay and therefore they're not okay, so they can't stop, right? Like there's this whole line of thinking and I'm grateful for them in so many ways, right? But if you were to ask me that question now, I look at things a little different. Not that I wouldn't necessarily give them most of it and still hold those same beliefs and love for my parents, but I genuinely do believe that one of the biggest assets, like if and this is something I only learned like last probably year or so, which is, a lot of people talk about investing into like real estate, and my family does a bit of real estate investing, and we do it as a family. Some people talk about investing in stocks, right? Some people talk about cryptocurrency, right? There's all these like vehicles to like, for your money to like, for you to invest money so it can grow, right? Everyone understands this concept. But I think, and this is not my idea, but it's just kind of been drilled into me from different mentors and different people. I think one of the best assets you can have, just as if you looked at it as buying a piece of land or a great stock at a great price, is having a great personal brand. I do believe that having a great personal brand is one of these assets that you cannot really evaluate the totality of how much it can give back to you. Just kind of like property. If you've ever held on the property for 5-10 years and then you ever do a refinance of it, it's always shocking. We don't ever coach on real estate. We just kind of live it in our own lives. But I know some people that they do, and the checks are insane. And it's, for an investment that they made 10 years ago, you know what I mean? And it's this thing. So I think the personal brand, if we start, that's why I think it requires a bit of a mind shift, and I know you guys are like, we're not like a business show. So I don't necessarily want to get into it unless you guys want to.
You lost me a little bit though. So $10 million.
Okay.
You're taking it to create a personal brand?
Yes, 100%.
That's how much money it requires to do
well, I wouldn't take the whole 10 million, right? Yeah. But I think money is an amplifier of who you are. And if we had the resources, if it was truly unlimited, like if it was like like we're not going to spend 10 million, like. Well,
so, but right. In essence, what you're saying is you want to put yourself on the map. So you become basically what you're saying. If I come down to the simple core meaning of it, right, is that you want to become a celebrity.
You want to amplify your
message.
message.
You want to become famous. That's what it is. Don't go around this. It's
no. So okay. So I was at a
personal brand is being known and being widely known, right, and respected and taken seriously, and finding.
But it might only be in a particular niche.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah,
niche
like-
that is, right? So,
Right. I don't think.
and that gives you power, obviously, right? So that's a very good way of translating the monetary value into basically power, right? Into influence.
Which gives you security.
Influence, right? It's a very interesting point.
It gives you influence.
Absolutely.
Because people don't buy from brands. People buy from people, right? It's always this relationship of H2H, right? We call it human to human.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And people buy it's really crazy, right? Like people love buying, but they never they don't like being sold to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the idea is never selling to anybody. It's aspirational marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's marketing. Once again, are you like people buy things because of status, right? People buy things because it makes them feel a certain way, right? We're here in Vancouver. If you just walk around a couple of blocks, you see a lot of like supercars, you know what I mean? Ferraris, Lamborghini, and like, I'm not even a big car guy, so I'll probably butcher all the different, models and things like that. But I guarantee you, those people, they could have bought a car, right? They could have bought any car if they wanted to go from A to B, right? If they wanted to go grocery shopping or whatever. But yet they chose to buy a Ferrari. They chose to buy a McLaren because that speaks to who they are. But also, it gets them to feel in a certain state. Guarantee you, they feel a little better in the Ferrari. And, this is a debate, right, on what feels better and what have you. Different people have different preferences, but I think it does come down to not just being a celebrity, but having the influence.
All right, but you didn't arrive to the end point, though. You translated this energy, which was the energy of money, into the energy of influence and power, right? You didn't cash it in still. It's still, you could use it. So you got now your influence, you translated. Maybe you quadruple this money through that transformation of energy, right?
Yeah.
So now you got the influence. Now where are you going to take that? You got your influence. Where are you taking it?
Well, I think, a lot of the thoughts and the values of the podcast that I've worked on the last couple of years, the inner Changemaker, even in the fact of helping people create their own legacies, right? Different people would answer that differently. Like, what is your legacy? You know what I mean? Or how do you plan on creating that? Or do you think about that? Right? I've asked that to almost every single guest, and some people say family. Some people refer to some of their achievements. Some people refer to their podcast or their books, not because of the fame, but because now they have something that they could actually leave behind if it was all to end tomorrow. Now they have something that their children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren can reference back to how they were able to work through a problem, So I think
that's when if you actually it was a self-made thing. You made that 10 million and you did it, and so there's legacy. But we're not talking about that. We just deposited $10 million.
Yeah, I mean, you just drew up 10 million.
So there's no legacy. There's no legacy there. You just got the influence.
No,
what do you do? I mean, there's no legacy.
It's just I don't. Gabi's got an issue with you doing anything with this $10 million, but putting it in the bank or something. But
no, he transferred.
We all have a need to feel like our presence here matters, right? We all have this built-in desire to contribute in some way, shape, or form, and money happens to be the greatest platform for being able to do that, right? And you can do so much more with $10 million than you can do with 10, right? So it's not about whether you've got money or not. And if you don't have any influence and you don't have any power, that 10 million bucks in the bank doesn't do anything. You
did get, I guess you're not, maybe I'm not making like myself clear. You got the influence. This is power, but this power is nothing unless you apply to get something. Right? You want to put it to work, right? So the question is, what are you going to put your influence to work for? Where are you going to, who are you going to? I think that just the influence for the sake of influence, you got to get something, right? what do you want to affect in this world with that influence?
So I think it's about, so to answer your question directly, it's about the causes that I genuinely believe in. And I remember you just brought up this one story, which I haven't actually shared, or I guess not publicly. I share this like with my own students, because when I started the podcast, I actually started, the theme was a little more vague than what it is now. The theme was like impact. Like I wanted just tangible impact. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what comes to mind for you guys, but when I say that, I still think of social entrepreneurs. I still think of like kind of like a Tom Shoes model, right? Like you buy a pair of shoes, you donate it, or you buy a pair of glasses, you donate. So I was like, okay, I'm going to interview social entrepreneurs, and that's going to be my niche, right? And so after like 7 weeks of doing my whole audience work, that's what I came up to. And within the second interview of the second social, like the second interview of the social entrepreneur, I just knew, like 10 minutes into the conversation, I was like, okay, this is not it. This is not like what the podcast needs to be about. This is not what's going to light me on fire, right? This is not what's going to get people listening. And I don't know. I think sometimes you just know, right? And for me, I went back to the drawing board after that second interview. I said, okay, who is it that I actually want to interview? Who is it that I actually want to learn from? And the reason I go back to that is because I think a lot of times it's great to have like a social cause. I think it's amazing. You know, I know a lot of my friends that they have a social component to it. I also am a big believer that you could create, like it's your duty and responsibility to create as much income as possible so that you can make and donate to causes that you deeply care for. You know, going back to something that Tim says, it's about leveraging the influence, leveraging in my opinion, the personal brand, leveraging your endorsement, leveraging all these things and pushing it into causes and things that you believe in, you know? So to be honest with you, we don't have like a charity arm or a cause, you know, right now.
It doesn't have to be. I'll give you an example. It's kind of fascinating to see what people do with the money, right? The real people who have the, you know, the means to do it, right? And I recently came across, and I might have mentioned that to Tim as well. You know, guys, Chris Hodges, who was a Facebook fame. He was the Mark Zuckerberg's roommate.
Okay.
But he wasn't the coder. He was kind of more of a communicator. He was running their marketing campaign. So in essence, he's kind of close to you in your kind of specialty, right? And your talents and special skills, right?
Sure.
And so he came from really poor family, and you know, he somehow through his excellent work at school, he secured it was a lucky ticket, but also because he's so he was applying himself. He's got a great scholarship. Anyways, he finds himself among this Ivy League kids, and he's coming from this very modest backgrounds, right? Anyways, long story short, he is who he is. He was a co-founder of Facebook, right? And so he talks about his experience when he got this real money for the first time. And he's thinking, what am I going to do? Now I have this influence, right? And what am I going to do with it? And he wrote a book about this. And you know what he came down to? He became a spokesperson for basic income for everyone. That in our current world, right, we are so rich that we must have basic income for anyone, for any human being on earth. There has to be a basic minimum income that nobody goes hungry. No kid is born and has to go through a couple of days without food and see their bellies going,
Sure.
all of that. So he was talking about that, and then he started actually thinking about how do I go about it, and meeting people and trying to see. And they ran a program in Africa, basically like a pilot kind of thing. They selected the village in one country, and they made a deal with the government, and they started giving people monthly income and just kind of collecting data, what they did with it, and whether it actually improved their well-being and how, what happened from that. And he wrote a book about that. And I was like, oh my God, look at that. that's what he does. And then you go to people like Mark himself, for example, or his wife, right? For example, now is also in the news a lot, and whatever. And it got me like thinking, okay, if I had that, what would I do? How would I want to transform the world, right? And that was interesting contemplation, to think about this. That's why I'm kind of thinking, would that be a good way of understanding what it is that you want to do if you went through this exercise and really then kind of already cutting all the intermediate steps, cut to the chase and get on track with what you actually feel passionate about, by removing all this. Yeah.
He's got to go.
It's freezing also, right? The video is freezing, I think.
I don't.
I think it's good. It's good on my end.
He's focused on you, man.
Yeah.
But Jay, you're out of time, right? We need to wrap up. Okay, so before we let you go, please give the audience, how do we get more Jay Wong?
More Jay Wong.
Yeah.
Come to Vancouver. Come talk to me. Here's my address. I'm just joking. So hey, if you guys are wherever you're listening to this right now, so a couple things. I would love any feedback on this. I mean, there's so many different angles that we took with this. And what would you do with the $10 million? I would love to have people comment on this and just to kind of see what they would do. I don't know. It's a really interesting thinking exercise. So if you guys want to listen, if you're watching this on YouTube, Jay Wong TV is a really great kind of where we're looking to push out more content. But if you're listening on the podcast, wherever you're listening to the Inner Changemaker, that is going to be where you can sample some of the interviews and some of the work that we've been putting together.
Okay, cool. We'll get those in the show notes. Jay, thank you. This was fun. I knew it would be fun. I knew it would go by way too fast. But here we are.
Yes.
Appreciate you guys. Maybe we can get you back sometime in the future.
Yes.
We'll let you run. I know you're up against the time.
Yes. Appreciate you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
Hi, this is Tim Starr. Thanks for joining me and Gabi on the universe between your ears. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for a little while. And we'd like to see you again. So be sure to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming the podcast from, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes or whatever the hell else is out there. We want to see you again. We also want to hear from you. So let us know what you think of each episode. Let us know if you got an idea for a future episode that you think would be just killer. Absolutely, let us know. All right? Thanks again, and we will see you next time around. Bye-bye.